The red dust of Mars swirled against the dome of Colony Base Alpha as Captain James Walker stood at the observation deck. His eyes scanned the horizon, where the setting sun painted the sky in shades of deep crimson. The colony had grown significantly since its establishment 30 years ago, now housing over 50,000 souls. Mining operations and research facilities dotted the landscape, testament to humanity's first successful step into the solar system. The first warning came as a simple anomaly on the long-range scanners, a distortion in space, dismissed by many as a sensor malfunction. Walker knew better. 15 years in the Earth Defense Force had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, every fiber of his being screamed danger. "Captain, we're detecting multiple objects entering the solar system," Lieutenant Rogers reported, his voice steady despite the tension. "They're moving at speeds we've never recorded before." Walker's grip tightened on the railing. "Get me a visual, maximum magnification." The main screen flickered to life, showing what appeared to be tears in the fabric of space itself. From these wounds in reality emerged ships unlike anything humanity had ever built. They were massive, organic-looking vessels that seemed to pulse with internal energy. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly metal that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Before Walker could issue any orders, all communication systems across the colony burst into life. A message, transmitted simultaneously in every known human language, filled the airways. "People of Earth, we are the Dominion. Your species has been observed and found wanting. Your technological progress poses a future threat to galactic stability. Submit to immediate containment and reduction protocols, or face extinction. You have 1 Earth hour to respond." The control room erupted into chaos. Walker maintained his composure, immediately activating the colony's defense protocols. But deep down, he knew their defensive capabilities were like paper shields against a hurricane. "Sir," Rogers called out, his face pale. "More ships are appearing. They're positioning themselves around Mars." Walker watched as the alien vessels surrounded the red planet in a perfect geometric pattern. Their formation spoke of military precision that had been perfected over countless conquests. He opened a channel to Earth Command, but the transmission was blocked. 58 minutes after the ultimatum, Earth's response came. It was simple, determined, and uniquely human. "We choose to fight." The Dominion's response was immediate and devastating. Energy beams of impossible power lanced down from their ships, cutting through Mars' thin atmosphere. The colony's shields, humanity's best defensive technology, might as well have been missed against a blowtorch. Walker watched in horror as research stations and residential domes were systematically destroyed. "Evacuate all civilians to the underground shelters," Walker ordered, his voice carrying over the base's emergency system. "This is not a drill. All military personnel to battle stations." The next 30 minutes were a blur of desperate action. Walker coordinated with other military officers to organize the defense, knowing it was futile but refusing to give up. The colony's anti-orbital batteries fired continuously, their best shots barely scratching the Dominion ship's shields. Through it all, Walker documented everything. Every weapon the enemy used, every tactic they employed, every weakness they might have shown. He knew that if anyone survived, this information would be crucial. As the main dome's integrity failed, he led a group of survivors to the hardened command bunker deep underground. From the bunker's monitors, they watched as the Dominion methodically destroyed Mars's infrastructure. Mining operations, research facilities, residential areas, nothing was spared. But they didn't destroy everything. They left just enough for the survivors to maintain basic life support, as if to demonstrate the totality of their victory and humanity's helplessness. The attack lasted less than 2 hours. When it was over, 40,000 colonists were dead, and humanity had learned a harsh truth. They were not alone in the universe, and they were terrifyingly behind in technological development. But the Dominion had made a crucial mistake. They had assumed that humanity, faced with such overwhelming force, would break. Instead, the attack on Mars became a rallying cry. As Walker helped coordinate the survivors and maintain what was left of the colony, Earth was already changing. In the days that followed, Walker witnessed humanity's transformation through the scattered communications they could still receive. Nations that had been rivals for centuries now united against a common threat. The entire global economy shifted to a war footing. Factory production lines were retooled, research priorities were altered, and military forces were combined under a unified command. The Dominion had expected submission. What they got instead was the awakening of humanity's full industrial and military potential. Walker saw the determination in every survivor's eyes, heard it in every transmission from Earth. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. 1 month after the attack, as Walker helped load the last group of survivors onto a stealth transport bound for Earth, he looked back at the ravaged surface of Mars. The red planet's scars would serve as a reminder of the day everything changed, when humanity learned it had to become what it feared to survive. The transport's captain handed Walker a data chip, direct from Earth Command. Every major military and industrial center on Earth has gone into full production. The entire asteroid belt is being converted into shipyards. They're calling it the Arsenal of Humanity. Walker nodded, clutching the chip. The Dominion thought they had demonstrated their superiority. Instead, they had triggered something unprecedented: the total mobilization of humanity's industrial, technological, and military might. For the first time since the attack, Walker smiled. The real war hadn't even begun. Lieutenant Emma Stone walked through what had once been Detroit's largest car factory. The assembly lines that had once produced family sedans now churned out components for battle mechs. The transformation had taken less than 3 months, and similar changes were happening in every major industrial center on Earth. She paused to watch a massive robotic arm lift the core of a fusion reactor into place. The workers, many of whom had been building cars just months ago, moved with purpose and precision. They understood what was at stake. Every piece of equipment they built could mean the difference between humanity's survival and extinction. "Lieutenant, the latest production numbers are in," her assistant said, handing her a tablet. Emma scanned the figures, a small smile forming on her face. They were ahead of schedule. The tablet chimed with an incoming message. Project Phoenix was ready for its first test. Emma hurried to the command center, where dozens of screens showed various manufacturing operations across Earth and throughout the asteroid belt. Each screen told the same story. Humanity's industrial machine was running at full capacity. The largest screen showed a live feed from the asteroid belt. What had once been simple mining operations were now mobile weapons platforms. Emma had led the team that designed the conversion process. They had taken the massive mining lasers, originally designed to break down asteroids, and modified them into weapons that could punch through spacecraft armor. "All systems are go for the test firing," the technical director announced. "Target drone is in position." Emma watched as the modified mining platform oriented itself toward the target. The mining laser, now upgraded with military-grade targeting systems, powered up. The beam lasted less than a second. When it ended, the target drone had been cut cleanly in half. The command center erupted in cheers, but Emma was already focused on the next challenge. One weapon wouldn't be enough. They needed thousands, and they needed them fast. 3 months later, Emma stood on the bridge of the EDF Liberty, humanity's first purpose-built warship. Around them, a fleet of converted mining ships moved into formation. Long-range sensors had detected a Dominion battle group approaching the Jupiter defense line. "Fleet Command, this is Phoenix Lead," Emma reported. "All modified platforms are in position and ready for combat operations." The response came from Admiral Thompson himself. "Understood. Phoenix Lead. Remember, we only get one shot at surprising them. Make it count." Emma looked at the tactical display. The Dominion ships were advancing in their usual perfect formation. They had no reason to expect anything different from their previous encounters with human forces. They were about to learn how much things had changed. The Dominion fleet emerged from their faster-than-light travel exactly where predicted. Their ships, massive and powerful, moved to establish a battle line. Standard procedure for them, based on the data collected during the Mars attack. Emma gave the order. All Phoenix units, execute combat pattern Alpha. The converted mining ships, hidden among the asteroids, powered up simultaneously. Their weapons, designed to cut through rock, had been modified to operate at frequencies that would disrupt Dominion shield harmonics. The theory was solid, but this would be the first real test. The first volley caught the Dominion completely by surprise. Beams of concentrated energy struck their ships from multiple directions. Their shields, calibrated to defend against conventional weapons, failed against the mining laser's unusual frequencies. Direct hits confirmed on multiple targets, the tactical officer reported. Enemy shields are failing. The Dominion ships attempted to regroup, but they had never faced an enemy that attacked from so many directions at once. The mining ships, despite their improvised nature, proved remarkably effective. Their industrial-grade power plants could sustain continuous fire, something the Dominion's military doctrine hadn't accounted for. Emma watched as the battle unfolded. The Dominion's superior technology meant little against weapons they hadn't prepared for. Their ships, designed for direct confrontation, struggled to deal with opponents that attacked from the cover of the asteroid field. Phoenix Unit 7 reports ammunition depletion, the communications officer announced. Units 3 and 12 are also running low. Have them fall back to the resupply points, Emma ordered. This was another advantage they had discovered. The mining ships could replenish their energy weapons using standard power cells, unlike the Dominion's more sophisticated but less flexible systems. The battle lasted for 6 hours. When it was over, 7 Dominion warships had been destroyed or disabled. The remaining ships retreated, jumping out of the system in disarray. Humanity had won its first major victory. As the fleet regrouped, Emma received a transmission from Earth Command. The data from the battle would be used to improve the next generation of weapons. More importantly, factories across Earth were already implementing the lessons learned, modifying their production lines to create more effective weapons. Emma looked out at the asteroid field, now cleared of enemy forces. The converted mining ships moved into defensive positions, their industrial-grade engines glowing steadily. They weren't pretty, and they weren't sophisticated, but they had proven something crucial. Humanity could fight back. Back on Earth, the production lines never stopped. Every factory, every shipyard, every industrial facility worked around the clock. The victory at Jupiter had shown that humanity's industrial might could be a weapon in itself. They couldn't match the Dominion's technology yet, but they could overwhelm them with sheer numbers and unexpected applications of industrial equipment. Emma reviewed the production schedules for the next month. The factories in Detroit alone would produce enough battle mechs to equip 3 divisions. The shipyards in orbit were launching new warships daily. And here in the asteroid belt, more mining platforms were being converted into weapons platforms every hour. The Dominion had awakened humanity's industrial potential, and now they would face the consequences. Emma smiled as she watched another mining laser test fire successfully. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven it could fight back, and they were just getting started. Admiral Thomas Reed studied the holographic display showing the remains of the latest battle. The debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers, a mixture of both human and Dominion ships. But this time, the ratio had shifted in humanity's favor. The learning curve had been steep and costly, but they were finally beginning to understand their enemy. The bridge of the EDF Resilient hummed with activity as analysts processed data from the engagement. Each battle, win or lose, provided precious information about Dominion technology and tactics. Reed had made it his mission to understand not just how the Dominion fought, but why they fought that way. "Sir, we've completed the analysis of their shield frequencies," the tactical officer reported. "The pattern is consistent with previous encounters. They haven't adapted to our shield crackers yet." Reed nodded, stroking his chin thoughtfully. This was the Dominion's greatest weakness, their rigid adherence to established protocols. When humanity developed weapons that could overload their shields by matching and amplifying their resonant frequencies, the Dominion responded by simply strengthening their shields rather than changing the frequencies. "They're not stupid," Reed muttered to himself. "They're just inflexible." A trait that humanity was learning to exploit with devastating effect. The latest battle had proven their new tactics worked. Instead of matching the Dominion's organized battle formations, human ships now fought in loose, seemingly chaotic groups. They would scatter when attacked, only to regroup and strike from unexpected angles. The Dominion's precision-coordinated fleet movements became a disadvantage when their targets refused to behave predictably. A warning klaxon interrupted his thoughts. "Multiple Dominion signatures detected," the sensor operator announced. "They're heading for Alpha Centauri colony." Reed straightened. Alpha Centauri was humanity's first extrasolar colony, established just before the war began. Its defense had become a matter of pride as much as strategy. How many ships? 30-plus capital ships, sir. Largest fleet we've seen in this sector. They're learning too, Reed mused. The Dominion was finally adapting, committing larger forces to overwhelm human tactical advantages. Signal all ships in the sector. Battle Plan Delta. The human fleet gathered quickly 15 warships, 40 converted mining vessels, and hundreds of smaller craft. On paper, it was no match for the Dominion force, but Reed had long since learned that battles weren't won on paper. As the Dominion fleet approached Alpha Centauri, they moved in their characteristic arrow formation. Their ships, each one a masterpiece of advanced technology, maintained perfect spacing. Reed waited until they were fully committed to their approach before giving the order. Execute Delta maneuver. The human fleet exploded into apparent chaos. Ships broke formation, scattering in all directions. To the Dominion's tactical computers, it must have looked like a rout before the battle even began. That was exactly what Reed was counting on. The Dominion fleet split up, breaking their perfect formation to pursue what they saw as easy prey. That was their first mistake. Their second was not questioning why the human ships were all fleeing toward the system's asteroid belt. "All ships, initiate shield crackers on my mark," Reed ordered. The technology, reverse-engineered from captured Dominion shield generators, had been distributed throughout the fleet. Each ship now carried devices that could transmit energy at exactly the right frequency to overload Dominion shields. The trap was sprung. As the Dominion ships followed the scattered human fleet into the asteroid belt, hundreds of shield crackers activated simultaneously. The energy pulses, reflected and amplified by carefully positioned asteroids, created a web of destructive resonance. Dominion shields began failing across their entire fleet. Their ships, suddenly vulnerable, found themselves surrounded by human vessels that were no longer fleeing but turning to attack. The converted mining ships, their industrial-grade lasers optimized for shield-stripped targets, opened fire. The battle that followed was unlike anything seen before in the war. Human ships darted between asteroids, using the terrain in ways the Dominion's rigid tactical doctrine couldn't counter. When one human ship was threatened, others would immediately move to support it, displaying a level of initiative and coordination that didn't rely on central command. Reed watched as the tactical display showed more and more Dominion ships going dark. Their technology was superior, their ships more powerful, but they couldn't adapt fast enough to humanity's unconventional tactics. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're picking up Dominion transmissions. They're trying to establish a new command hierarchy. Their fleet commander's ship was among the first we destroyed." This was another advantage Reed had discovered. The Dominion's strict chain of command became a weakness when key links were broken. Human forces, trained to operate independently when necessary, could continue fighting effectively even when cut off from higher command. The battle lasted another 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt after the initial trap was sprung. When it was over, 23 Dominion ships had been destroyed or captured. The rest retreated, leaving Alpha Centauri secure. As Reed surveyed the aftermath, he received a priority transmission from Earth Command. The data from this battle would be invaluable. Not just the technical details of how their weapons performed, but the proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers, but their ability to adapt and innovate. The war had entered a new phase. The Dominion's initial technological advantage was being eroded by humanity's rapid learning and adaptation. Every battle, whether won or lost, taught them something new. And unlike their enemies, humans were eager to learn and quick to change their tactics. Reed looked at the colony they had successfully defended. Alpha Centauri represented humanity's first step beyond their solar system. Now it represented something else. Proof that humans could not only fight the Dominion but beat them at their own game. "Send word to all ships," Reed ordered. "The defense of Alpha Centauri was successful, but our work isn't done. The Dominion will adapt eventually. We need to be ready when they do." The crews acknowledged the order, already beginning to analyze the battle data and prepare for the next engagement. That was the human factor that the Dominion had never counted on. The relentless drive to learn, adapt, and overcome. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven they could do more than just survive. They could win. Commander David Wells crouched behind a fallen pillar in the Dominion Command Center, his stealth suit's camouflage system working overtime to keep him hidden. Around him, his strike team moved silently through the shadows, placing data taps on every computer terminal they could find. This mission, deep behind enemy lines, was the riskiest operation humanity had attempted yet. The Dominion space station hung in orbit around one of their core worlds, its massive form dwarfing even their largest warships. Intelligence suggested this was one of their primary command and control nodes, coordinating fleet movements across an entire sector of space. If they could crack its systems, they'd have a window into the enemy's entire military network. "Alpha Team in position," whispered Jones through the secure comm. "Data taps are live." "Beta Team ready," Miller added. Security systems successfully looped. Wells checked his tactical display. Everything was going according to plan, almost too well. In his experience, that usually meant trouble was coming. "Begin the download. Keep it slow and steady. We don't want to trigger any power fluctuations." The operation had taken months to plan. Human ships, using captured Dominion technology and modified stealth systems, had carried them to the target. Their infiltration suits, reverse-engineered from recovered Dominion armor, let them move through the station undetected. Even their data taps were built using Dominion components, making them virtually invisible to security scans. A soft beep from his wrist computer indicated the download was 20% complete. Wells forced himself to breathe slowly, counting the seconds. The intel they were gathering could change the course of the war, but only if they got out alive to deliver it. The first sign of trouble came 50 minutes into the operation. "Commander," Jones whispered urgently, "I'm picking up increased activity in the security networks." "They're running a Level 2 diagnostic." Wells cursed silently. Level 2 meant they were actively looking for intruders. "How much longer for the download?" 10 minutes minimum." "Sir." "All teams, activate secondary scrambling protocols," Wells ordered. "If they find one of us, they find all of us. Stay sharp." The minutes crept by with excruciating slowness. Wells could hear Dominion security teams moving through nearby corridors, their heavy footsteps echoing off the metal floors. The station's internal sensors swept the area repeatedly, searching for any anomaly that might reveal the human infiltrators. The download reached 90%, just as the first alarm sounded. "They detected the data transfer," Miller reported, his voice tight with tension. "Security protocols are activating." "Hold position," Wells commanded. "Let the download finish." They hadn't come this far to fail now. The last few seconds of the download felt like hours. Around them, the station came alive with activity. Security barriers slammed into place, and armed patrols began sweeping every section. The moment the download completed, Wells gave the order they'd all been waiting for. "Ghost protocol. Everyone out. Now." The strike team moved with practiced precision. Their exit route, carefully planned and memorized, would take them through maintenance shafts and emergency corridors. As they ran, Wells reviewed the preliminary data they'd stolen. What he saw made his blood run cold. The Dominion's entire military operated on a centralized command structure. Every ship, every station, every ground force received their orders from a handful of central command nodes. It was efficient and allowed for perfect coordination, but it was also their greatest weakness. The team reached their hidden shuttle just as the station's main weapons came online. Wells waited until everyone was aboard before triggering the explosive charges they'd planted during their infiltration. The resulting chaos covered their escape, the small shuttle slipping away while the station's crew dealt with multiple simultaneous emergencies. 3 days later, Wells stood before the Combined Earth Defense Force Command, presenting their findings. The room was packed with military leaders and civilian officials, all eager to hear what the raid had revealed. The Dominion's strength is also their fatal flaw, Wells explained, pointing to the holographic display. Their entire military depends on these command nodes. Disrupt them, and their forces lose the ability to coordinate effectively. The implications were staggering. For 2 years, humanity had been fighting defensive battles, struggling to hold their territory against superior forces. Now they had a chance to strike back at the heart of the enemy's military machine. Earth Command wasted no time. Within hours, Operation Thunderstrike was approved, a massive coordinated assault on multiple Dominion command nodes. The human war machine, built up over 2 years of constant production, would finally be unleashed at full strength. Wells watched from the bridge of his new command, the EDF Shadow Strike, as the largest human fleet ever assembled prepared for battle. Thousands of ships, from massive warships to converted mining vessels, gathered at strategic points throughout human space. The Dominion's rigid command structure had never faced an attack on this scale. The offensive began simultaneously across dozens of star systems. Human forces, operating with minimal central coordination, struck at Dominion installations with unprecedented fury. Their tactics, refined through 2 years of bitter experience, proved devastating against an enemy that couldn't adapt quickly enough. Wells led one of the primary strike forces, targeting a major Dominion command node. His fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into the middle of the enemy formation, their weapons already firing. The Dominion ships, caught off guard by such an aggressive maneuver, struggled to respond. All ships, execute attack pattern Omega, Wells ordered. Strike teams, prepare for boarding operations. The battle that followed was chaos by design. Human ships attacked from multiple directions, their formations constantly shifting. Converted mining vessels used their industrial-grade lasers to punch holes in Dominion defenses, while specially equipped boarding craft slipped through the gaps. The Dominion's response was predictably rigid. Their ships maintained perfect formation, even as it made them easier targets. Their commanders waited for orders from higher up the chain of command, orders that were increasingly delayed or confused as human forces damaged more command nodes. Wells monitored the broader strategic situation as his fleet engaged the enemy. Across Dominion space, the same scene was playing out. Human forces struck hard and fast, targeting command and control systems. Without clear orders, Dominion fleet commanders fell back on standard protocols that human forces had spent 2 years learning to counter. As the battle reached its peak, Wells received confirmation that his strike teams had successfully breached the command node's defenses. Similar reports came in from other sectors. The Dominion's carefully constructed command network was being torn apart, piece by piece. "Send word to all ships," Wells ordered. "Push forward. Don't give them time to regroup." The human war machine, forged in the fire of defensive battles, was now revealing its full offensive potential. The Dominion had created their perfect enemy, an adaptable, innovative force that could operate effectively without rigid central control. The tide of war had finally turned. Major Maria Torres stood at the viewport of the EDF Vengeance, watching as the combined human fleet approached the Dominion capital world. The planet below was beautiful, its purple-tinged clouds swirling over vast continents covered in gleaming cities. After 3 years of war, humanity had finally reached the heart of their enemy's empire. The fleet was massive, over 5,000 ships of various sizes and types. Some were purpose-built warships, bristling with weapons. Others were converted civilian vessels, their industrial equipment turned to military purposes. All of them bore the scars of previous battles, proud badges of survival and determination. Multiple Dominion signatures detected, the sensor operator reported. They're moving to protect the capital. Torres nodded, unsurprised. This would be the largest battle of the war. The Dominion had gathered every ship they could spare to defend their homeworld. Their fleet was still impressive, even after the devastating losses they'd suffered in recent months. All ships, battle stations. Torres ordered. Execute final approach as planned. The human fleet split into its component battle groups, each one operating independently but coordinating through the tactical network. This was how humanity had learned to fight, not as a single rigid force, but as hundreds of small adaptable units working toward a common goal. The first shots were fired at extreme range, both sides probing each other's defenses. The Dominion fleet maintained their traditional formation, a wall of capital ships protected by screens of smaller vessels. 3 years ago, such a sight would have terrified any human commander. Now Torres saw only the weaknesses in their positioning. "Launch the first wave," she commanded. Hundreds of smaller craft shot forward from the human fleet. They were a mix of fighters, bombers, and specially modified mining ships. Their apparent chaos masked a carefully planned assault pattern. The Dominion responded predictably, shifting their formation to counter the apparent threat. That's when Torres sprung the trap. Second wave. Execute jump now. 1,000 ships suddenly appeared behind the Dominion fleet, having used short-range jumps to bypass their lines completely. The enemy formation, optimized for a frontal engagement, now found itself caught between two forces. The battle exploded into furious action. Space itself seemed to light up with weapon fire. Human ships darted and weaved through the Dominion formation, their tactics refined by years of brutal experience. The Dominion fought back with their superior technology, but they couldn't match the flexibility and initiative of the human forces. Torres kept one eye on the tactical display as she directed her battle group. The human fleet was taking losses, but they were inflicting far greater damage on the enemy. More importantly, they were disrupting the Dominion's ability to coordinate their defense. "Major," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. The Dominion High Council is requesting terms." The bridge fell silent. After 3 years of constant warfare, the concept of victory seemed almost foreign. Torres opened a channel to Fleet Command, relaying the message. The response came quickly. "Continue the attack. Push toward the surface. We'll discuss terms once we have orbital control." Torres understood the logic. The Dominion had to know that defeat was inevitable now. This was about making sure they understood the completeness of that defeat. The space battle continued for another 6 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. One by one, the Dominion ships were destroyed or forced to surrender. Their formation, once perfect, broke apart into isolated groups that were quickly overwhelmed. As the last enemy ships were dealt with, Torres led the ground assault personally. Dropships descended through the atmosphere, carrying human troops and equipment to the surface. The Dominion's ground defenses were formidable, but they lacked the coordination that had made them so effective at the start of the war. Standing in the Grand Hall of the Dominion High Council 12 hours later, Torres felt a strange mix of emotions. The room was filled with both human and Dominion leaders. The terms of surrender were being discussed, but her attention was drawn to the massive window overlooking the capital city. Smoke rose from several districts where fighting had been heaviest, but most of the city was intact. That had been a deliberate choice. Humanity could have bombarded the planet from orbit, reduced its cities to rubble. Instead, they had fought their way down with precision and restraint. The Dominion leaders seemed confused by this approach. They had expected the same ruthlessness they had shown at Mars 3 years ago. Instead, they found their conquerors discussing reconstruction and cooperation. "Your forces are to be disbanded," the human representative was saying. "Your military technology will be surrendered, but your civilian infrastructure will remain under your control. We're not here to destroy your civilization." Torres listened as the terms were laid out. The Dominion would lose its military power, but retain its autonomy in other matters. Their worlds would not be occupied. Their people would not be enslaved. Instead, they were being offered membership in a new interstellar federation, as equals rather than subjects. Some of the Dominion leaders protested, but others seemed to understand. Humanity had proved itself the superior military power, but they weren't interested in empire. They wanted partners, not slaves. Later, walking through the capital city with a mixed patrol of human and Dominion security forces, Torres reflected on how much both sides had changed. Humanity had been forced to become a military power, to build the most formidable war machine the galaxy had ever seen, but they had managed to retain their humanity in the process. The war was over, but its lessons would not be forgotten. Humanity's industrial might, their ability to adapt and innovate, their capacity for both fury and mercy, these would be remembered. The Dominion had sought to contain what they saw as a potential threat. Instead, they had helped forge humanity into something unprecedented, a power that could win a war without losing its soul. Torres looked up at the stars, now visible as night fell over the capital. Humanity's war machine had served its purpose. Now it would be transformed again, this time into something that could build rather than destroy. That, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all.